What's going on? Boys, thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. This one will probably be pretty disorganized. However, I am fascinated with gender relations, and this video is more a bit of small progress made in understanding what's going on. We'll start with the dudes with the Madonna-Whore complex. That's been around for a long time, but I've heard it more recently. You know the way society gets obsessed with phrases or words or concepts for a couple years each? A while ago it was gaslighting. Now it's humiliation ritual. Everyone was gaslighting, now everything is a humiliation ritual. Now, maybe, I can feel the seeds in the soil that have been sown. Every dude has a Madonna-Whore complex. And I was thinking about it, and yes, that is the case. In fact, I don't think it's as much a complex as it is a mechanism. Because when you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. The average dude is a worm in value and in behavior. We've talked about this on this channel forever. This isn't new news, but it can't be overstated how low value most young dudes are. And it's a correct appraisal. However, as a dude, unless you are born very wealthy, very attractive, and on top of those two things, had the right people on your side sheltering you, even dudes who age into success still came out of the soil as a worm, or as worms. And I think a lot about male biology, beyond the regular testing to see if I've become a bisexual yet. I haven't. On the one side, you have the evolution argument, the biology argument, that men are designed to sleep with as many women as possible, and will if given the chance. On the other side, you have the moralizers who deny that fact. However, here, probably unintentionally on their part, that side has an argument too, equally, at least to my eyes, backed by evolution, backed by biology, that says a man won't, that a man is monogamous, not for moral reasons, but instead purely for security reasons. In the absence of abundance, you get into a take and hold mindset. That one happens to be right now where morality sits. Probably because morality exists to make you feel better about your status quo and to maintain a status quo. But you take one of these ardently monogamous dudes. If you put them in a pocket dimension where they could engage in abundance without needing to worry about the security concerns, which again you'll moralize around, sensibly, in this case, in our environment, yes, it is so much better to have one partner you can trust. This is one of the few times in life morality and practicality overlap, interweave, make sense. This is the situation you don't have a choice in, but also you don't have to feel bad about it. You can actually feel good about it if you manage to pull it off. But take them into that pocket dimension. You have an abundance of women you can trust, who understand you, who love you, won't betray you, switch up on you, nothing to worry about. That's where the morality shit would, if this were the case in reality, diverge. You'd have the people who would engage, and then you'd have the moralizers who, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, say they wouldn't engage, still talking up the monogamy morality thing. But my point is they would still recognize that temptation at its strongest, because it's there, and it's real, and they can partake, and there is nothing except This morality that they are clinging to in this pocket dimension, keeping them from something they want to do. The point is, they will want to. And before we get into the main thrust of this point, another thing I'd been thinking about, I don't think you can consider yourself virtuous in anything if you don't have the ability or the opportunity not to be virtuous. It's like the peace thing or the weakness, peaceful thing. If you don't do violence because you can't do violence, that's not a virtue. I was watching some biblical shit the other night, and they were talking about wealth, the camel and the needle thing, or the rope and the needle thing. The idea the wealthy either can't be saved or will have great difficulty being saved probably sounds and feels very good to people who aren't wealthy. Always beware anyone who tells you the most virtuous thing to be is exactly what you are right now. Especially if exactly what you are right now is what most people are, and will never have the opportunity or ability to be otherwise. The Madonna-Whore thing makes sense when you consider the fact men are designed to operate polyamorously given ideal conditions. Maybe you wouldn't because you're a noble, special fella. However, you would still want to. You would still feel that temptation because that's what you're designed to do, given that you're able to. And in a situation like that, the Madonna-Whore thing makes sense because you need a mechanism that will push you into getting one woman you idealize for whatever reason, and then just as quickly, immediately in some cases, like a switch flip, disgusted with her. So, you'll move on with no hesitation. It'd be inconvenient to your genetics if you didn't desire at all, or desired only enough to be interested but not to pursue. And pursuit, when this mechanism kicks in, is insanity. You're deranged. And then be able to turn it off in Seinfeldian fashion, realizing she has man hands. And that mechanism makes sense in abundance. It makes even more sense in desolation. Hunt through the wastelands to get what you want, and then, immediately after getting it, find a genetic excuse to keep going. And I think this is where, and I don't know why people don't talk about this, the sudden male hostility thing. This feels like a big deal. Nobody talks about it. I think back to my time catfishing, posing as a woman. This was a while, well, no, not just a while ago. This was when I was a kid. Posing as a woman to see how dudes operate. And a lot of dudes randomly will go psycho. And maybe thinking back, or maybe if I did this again with older eyes, I'd be able to find some pattern. But as a kid, there was no pattern I could pick up on. It'd be normal discussion 1 minute, and that could go on for however long. It didn't even need to go on that long in some cases. And then something happens, and they lose their shit. Maybe I ran into a bad patch of dudes, but I don't think that's the case. In my own life, I recognize my doing this occasionally. I'll of course justify myself that I don't flip shit until a bitch tests me, which is mainly just being a cunt out of nowhere. But no, I don't respond to that in a standard fuck you and it's over way. So I like to think I don't flip shit for no reason, but I imagine that's the case with most dudes. And I think that's the function of the Madonna-Whore thing, or one of the clearest, most surface of the water levels you can see it at. For whatever reason, this isn't going the way I want, provoked or not provoked, so I'll nuke it so I can move on. And I think the nuking is necessary here, because if you don't nuke it, then you have two potential problems. The first potential problem is internal. You've moved on, but you haven't really moved on, and now you're stuck in an even worse version of the situation you were in before. And then you have an external problem in a woman who might either still have feelings for you or who might suddenly, as women are wont to do, now all of a sudden have feelings. And you think Madonna-Whore is crazy. This mechanism is another form of insanity, because it's, when it happens, you would never have had feelings for a dude like this in any circumstance outside the one you tripped or he tripped his Madonna-Whore complex and said, fuck you, and now you're interested. Specifically because of that, no other thing in the world would make you attracted to this fudge person. So the nuking burns both the bridges. And when I say triggered his Madonna-Whore complex with the woman example, I mean chose to walk away without burning the bridge. Fucked up shit happens when the bridges aren't burned. So Madonna-Whore, natural mechanism, not a neurosis, but of course it's framed as one, because what men are, on the whole, all their neuroses, so-called, are dangerous to the status quo, are dangerous to power structures, and so are suppressed. However they can be suppressed. The Madonna-Whore thing, not as specifically threatening to the powers that be, but anything you can do to, or anything you can put on men's plate to worry about, you're better. They're better. And then we get into the women's side of the video. I've been trying to readjust my algorithm. A little difficult when you listen to Incel Core and you like guns, and you spend most of your time listening to supernatural conspiracies. YouTube has you pegged, it knows what you are. But after pulling teeth, I'm now a little bit better able to get women's perspective on what's going on a boots on the ground level. Women and their problems in their own words. And I think this has to be some natural shit must be going on here. Because this insight is really difficult to get a hold of. It's like the actual woman conversation has nothing to do with the public broadcasted woman conversation. And I've been trying to understand what women are now. Because it seems like the new meta vaginal strategy, and a lot of them do this, including ones you would think don't need to, one, and have no business doing it, two, are engaging in now. They're doing the I'm edgy and fucked up thing, like they're these lone, misunderstood strugglers, similar to what the Guts profile picture dudes are doing. And it's super effective. Like, you post a wilted flower in grayscale with some neon purple, and immediately you're a celebrity. And that always confused me for a number of reasons. One, because if you're framing yourself as this lonely struggler, how do you keep that act up when you're a celebrity? But more, and frustratingly so, because it doesn't seem like they're lying exactly. On the one hand, they are putting on masks and getting their lawn chairs and all sitting by the stream and hooking these dumb fucking tadpole guys, me included. And that's the frustrating part of this, is when you recognize that something is a strategy, it's false, and maybe you don't bite the hook, but you're like Patrick or SpongeBob or whatever, and you feel the call to the alt hose. And it's not always sadistic, it is always a power thing. However, usually when someone is grifting, you can see it immediately. Or if you can't see it immediately, then once all is revealed, you can see them for what they are. With this huge wave of women, there is a degree of authenticity to the mask they wear. In fact, that's probably what makes it most effective. So, what are they doing? The common incel meme is they're all lusting after Chad or Giga Chad or Tyrone. There's a long list of names now, but rarely, if ever, do you see signs they are with these dudes they are supposed to be with. There's not any smoke. So where can there be a fire? And I learned about situationships. You're aware of them, you know what they are. But situationship is the woman loneliness to men's isolation loneliness. At least that's the way it looks. And that should have been more obvious to me. Of all the women I work with and deal with, of all ages, only 2 are married. One because she should be, old enough to be, and the other one because she married young. And I wonder if things would have been different with her if circumstances had been different back then, and I get the sense she wonders too. All the rest of them are never or are rarely single, but they also always seem miserable and a little panicked. And I think what I was witnessing was the outsider's view of the situationship tar pits. You remember in Ice Age the tapirs playing Extinction? That's what I think is going on with women. Or at least this sort of woman, and there are a lot of them. The same way these good-looking, well-off dudes, you see them scraping the bottom of the barrel now because shit's gotten that bad. I think the extinction event that is situationships is woman's or women's side of this. And it's not all lusting after these super 0.0001% dudes. And it's interesting because it looks like that's the model it follows, but not exclusively with these golden catch dudes. And I think that has a lot to do with how men have gotten in the last 20 years. It looks like most women get bounced around by avoidant attachment dudes, which is interesting, because any sort or class of dude can be avoidant. But instead of going for what most people would consider to be specifically or only the golden catch dudes, which is what you hear people say is what's going on, in reality, it's more like women get Goldilocks zoned by avoidant dudes. Just close enough, but not too far for years. And I think that's where the authenticity of this class of woman's loneliness comes from. You're never literally alone, nor would you ever need literally to be alone. Instead, your loneliness comes from the fact you've been addicted to hope by a dude or by a sort of dude who will ensure you never get what you want. Both because he probably can't give you what you think you want, and also probably because what you think you want doesn't exist. You're chasing the emotional dragon here. And it seems like that's what most people's lives have devolved into in one way or another. You are addicted to the misery of your inability to get something. Because as long as you're miserable, you're allowed at least to feel like maybe it could exist, even though it doesn't, and probably on some level you know that. And I'm curious how that happened. Because, again, in traditional ideas about what's going on, they make it out to be like women are going after the top 1% of dudes, and that's not what's going on. It's like these Pied Piper dudes rolled up, and now Chad is going after 50-year-old women in his mid-20s. And maybe I'm completely misunderstanding this. Maybe there is something I'm missing here, but from the way it's looking to me, it looks like most women got caught up in the cult of avoidant attachment dudes, which to some extent I can understand. Avoidant attachment women hurt so good, but it looks like most women spend most of their time trapped between a few of this sort of dude, and then in between, it's like ritual killings. They'll do to low status loser dudes what is currently being done to them before they jump back into the torment cycle, or they will try in earnest to have a normal relationship, and they'll spend some time and they'll recognize that this is going better, but damn if the torment cycle doesn't feel better. And I don't know why that is. Because I reiterate, it's not like they're gambling on getting the highest status, most attractive dude they can. That's not what they're doing. Or maybe it is, but not in the way we're trained to think about it. Maybe there is something more. I hate to say that it's this addiction to the idea that you could have something that can't exist. But maybe that is what's going on. Maybe that is what it is. Because the dudes who are doing this are not all super attractive or super high status. It's like avoidance in itself is a drug that produces some chemical in the brain that is more addictive than actual factual super success. And I wonder if part of this isn't cyclical. As in, the longer this goes on, the more, we mentioned earlier, dudes, worms, dudes crawl out of the dirt. They spawned from worms. If these no longer worm dudes develop avoidant attachment and enter this torment cycle pool with the intention of doing to women what women did to them before they developed this attachment style. And this isn't to say all avoidant attachment dudes have this power in this game, but avoidance looks like it's the hot commodity. So it's like this self-feeding torment thing. Little worm dudes get tormented by tormented women, and then some of them go on to torment women, who will in turn torment dudes, who will become tormentors, and the cycle continues. I don't know, but it sure is weird, and we'll need to study more on this. All I can think is this is already a bad situation. I can't imagine how much worse it's going to be in the future. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.